There's so much information about the bombings that keeps pouring in. We want to break it all down with terrorism expert Glen Winn. Glen, thank you for coming to Prime Time.
Glad to be here.
This is a mess, and it's a very sad situation. And it seems like by the hour there's more that unfolds, more details, important details. Can you give us all the current information and your take on all this?
Well, my take on it is that the case investigation is moving along quite rapidly, hopefully successfully. They keep recovering, if you will, pieces of evidence. As was mentioned earlier, they found what appears to be the top lid off of a pressure cooker. As you know, yesterday they found a very large piece of the lower part of one of these pressure cookers, and they've also found core boards and perhaps some other wiring and so on. So all of those pieces fit together as far as evidence for the investigative report, if you will, and then ultimately prosecution of the suspect or suspects.
And they were pulling out the ball bearings out of the victims, from what I understand, their bodies.
Yes.
Now, we have a pressure cooker here on the desk. Can you kind of explain to us how they were able to make a bomb out of this? Because it's pretty crazy to me.
This particular device, if you will, has been publicized on several networks within the jihadist networks for the last 3 years.
Really?
And within the last 3 months, there's been a piece that was publicized over a long period of time. In that 3 month, I should say, over a week period of time, it was live, if you will, on the various jihadist networks. Now, basically, the explosive device would fit inside, and then they would surround the device itself, or the explosive materials they used.
Can you open and show us how they do that?
I really, I'm not familiar with this particular one, but
yeah, they're all different. Now
they're all different. I would suspect that inside of this, the explosive compounds will be placed around that, and probably attached to it some way would be the nails and the ball bearings and or BBs. As we know from one of the doctors indicated, one of the victims, they took at least 60 pieces of shrapnel off that person.
Jeez.
So, you know, to have that person still survived through all of that and the trauma of losing leg or several legs, you know, 2 legs on one individual, that's incredible. But that also shows the rapid response of the medical teams and what a great job they did, and we have to compliment on that.
I still don't understand. Did they figure out how they detonated the bomb?
I don't know that. You know, as we know, devices have been detonated by cell phones, other electronic devices such as garage door openers, or even a small radio, if you will. It could be that method, or it could have just been a timing device left inside, and they took a chance on moving those major pieces, the bomb itself.
Yeah, because you see a guy running, right?
You'd have a pretty good idea something's wrong.
Right, but so and a suicide bomber, I mean, they expect to get blown up.
They don't care, they just stay there.
But is that why we had heard that they turned off cell service? Was that why, were they afraid more bombs were going to get detonated?
That's a good question. I don't know. I would suspect that that's probably a good analyzation of what happened, because immediately after the 2 explosions, it was reported that cell phone service had been turned off. It makes sense that you would do that as a law enforcement agency. You would request that, because you had 2 successive bombs in a very, 12 seconds. And the rest of the crowds are still in the area. You don't know if there's other explosives. You want to shut down that terminal, if you will, to preclude any more explosives.
You know, what's striking to me is that you said there has been instructions on how to make these sorts of bombs on the internet, yet you know, you can buy these pressure cookers, no problem. They're used for cooking, but at some point, when do we, you know, keep a file of who purchases the pressure cookers?
You know, it's easily distributed appliance, if you will. It's used in the Middle East for cooking rice. It's also used for other continual cookage of different meats, if you can get your hands on those in the Middle East. And so it's a common piece to see. Much older, it's handed down through families, if you will. But you know, you have to realize that this is made out of this appears to be aluminum, but some of those are made out of cast iron and so on. So you have a very, very heavy piece of metal, if you will. Using that as a shrapnel initiative, I'm sorry, using that as the main container for the bomb, but then that forms the big pieces of shrapnel that we've seen that were flying through the air. If they found this lid, which appears to be from one of these on a roof, that gives you an idea of the volume of the explosion, and then it gives you a good idea of how much explosive material compounds were in that. Now, I've heard some commentators say, oh, it was a low yield explosive. I don't buy that. When you look at the very, very bright cloud, you know, above the explosive area, and then you look at that fireball in each one of those bombs. Right. It was very large. It was very bright, and you know that the degree of heat in there was approximately 2,000 degrees. Jeez Louise. So the people that survived are very lucky, not only from losing limbs, but also the extensive burns that were described by the doctors. And it would be that way after a bombing. You know, I want to say, you keep saying that you could track this back to people in the Middle East making this. Does that help target maybe the culprits? I keep looking at the ambush technique used in this bombing, and that is a typical technique that has been used extensively in the Middle East, Iraq, Afghanistan, against our own troops, against their own forces over a long period of time. We've also seen similar kind of explosive used against the Israelis. We've seen it in France up to 20 years ago when, you know, explosive took place within a small theater. Down the street, another explosive took place. So this is not common. It's not new technology by any means. No, it's not. Guerrilla warfare. It is. It is truly an ambush. And the thing is, we don't want to label anybody, any country yet. No. We don't have enough information. It could be anybody. It could be they could have done this. Somebody, the culprit, could have done this to, you know, make us think it was somebody from the Middle East. So who knows? You know, jury's still out on that.